You must be at least 18 years of age to listen to the following podcast. I am Robert Black, and you are listening to Sexual Heroes. Get ready to take notes. A familiar and popular face and cock in the Bate community, known by his username SFNaturalMuscle. Today's guest will have you questioning if you've ever really masturbated before, as he shares his journey perfecting the art of self-pleasure. Hey brother, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to talk a lot about masturbation, which I think a lot of people think would take about 2 minutes to talk about, but I have this huge list of stuff to cover.
It's going to take us longer than 2 minutes if I'm around.
Yeah. So just to give a little background, you are not a porn performer. You don't have a pay OnlyFans account or anything like that, correct?
I do not, no.
So what we're going to talk about is from the perspective of like a real person who is not an internet performer.
That's right.
Okay. So I became aware of you first on a website called Bate World. Can you explain to people listening what that site is all about?
Yeah, so that's such a great question. So I've been a member of Bate World for, I guess, about 10 years now. When I first moved to San Francisco about 10 years ago, my best friend was driving around the city with me and he said, "Do you jack off?" And I laughed a little bit and I looked at him sort of sideways and I said, "Well, yeah, like, everybody does." And he says to me, he goes, "No, I mean, really jack off." And I looked at him and I said, "What are you talking about? Like, what is the difference between jacking off and really jacking off?" And he introduced me to Bate World. And so I signed on, I created a profile, and really what it is just a brotherhood. It's a community of guys. It's a website where other guys who are big time into, masturbation and jacking off. There's a video feature there and messaging feature and profiles and videos and all that kind of stuff, a video chat. So it's really just a place for people, like-minded people who are into masturbation and jacking off, go and interact.
Is it just about exhibitionism and voyeurism, or does it go beyond that?
Oh, it goes so far beyond that. I've been a member of the site now for, like I said, for 10 years or so, and I have good, solid friendships from that site. And not just internet friends, like we all have internet friends that we chat with or that we email with, or we might swap videos with. But, I have really good, solid friends in what we would call real life or real time, that I've met through Bate World. So it's more than just that. And it's also people who are just really into masturbation or really into jacking off. It's a big part of their life. Find a lot of guys on there who are, who share that passion, who are really into it.
What I say is a lot of people think of masturbation as just something you do just to get rid of the horniness, or something you have to resort to when you can't get real sex. But for people on Bate World, it's the steak and potatoes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like it's I don't want to call it a lifestyle choice, but there are some people who it isn't just, sneak into the bathroom while your partner's asleep and, jack one out. For some of us, it's, it really is a lifestyle. It's it can be an art form. I love it. I've loved it since I was a teenager. It's fun to have other people around who are as enthusiastic and into it as I am.
You said you have made friendships through the site, through jerking off, through masturbation. Do you ever run into people in the cam room that were already friends and then suddenly there you are on cam together?
That's a great question. Maybe that's happened once or twice. Over the last 10 years, maybe that's happened, but it's very rare. What tends to happen with me, though, is kind of the reverse. Like somebody will see me in the chat room and then they'll run into me in real life. And I can't tell you how many times that I've been in the gym. This usually happens in the gym. I'll be working out and somebody will come up to me and say, "Hey, I've seen your video work. It's just, I love it." They'll connect with you in that way in real life rather than the other way. I'm sitting here trying to think, whether I've ever known anybody in real, like what we call real time or real life. And then all of a sudden I see them on Bait World. I don't think that's happened, or I can't remember it happening.
Well, let's imagine it did. How would you react to that? How do you think you would react to that?
Oh, I think that would be great. Because let's say, because if you are on Bait World, let's say, and you're in the video chat feature of Bait World, right? Then automatically, by definition, you both are interested in the same thing. So why would that be awkward?
Right.
And the other thing too is that, I try not to use the term sex positive, because I think there are people who are really probably far more sex positive than I am. But, masturbation for me is not something that is like this taboo subject. Like we all have to be sort of ashamed of it in some way. Like literally 100% of human beings on planet Earth jack off or masturbate. It doesn't matter what sex you are. Everybody does it. So why are we all so hung up on it? It's like literally we all breathe and we all eat and we all jack off. So it's strange to me that there are people out there who think it's this big taboo subject, that's something to be avoided.
I cam on Chatterbait, and occasionally I have had people that know me come into the room and say hi, and it's totally cool with me.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if they want to be there and watch, then they want to be there and watch, and I enjoy putting on a show.
Exactly.
We talked about the exhibitionism, and it goes far beyond that, but that is a part of it, right? I mean, is that part of the turn on?
Yeah, for me, it definitely is. Like, I just always been a major league exhibitionist. It's super fun for me. It's a real turn on. I really love it. And there are other people that I know who are big voyeurs. And I love making, jack off porn videos that I post on my profile and elsewhere. But the funny thing is I don't tend to watch a lot of other videos. I'm so geared towards making them and less geared towards watching them. Not that I don't watch them, but I do not have that voyeuristic inclination, but the exhibitionist inclination is very strong. And yeah, so it's a big part. That's a big turn on for me, which is why I love the video chat feature of Bait World is awesome for that.
Oh, definitely.
It was funny because you and I were in the video chat room yesterday, and it was fun, right? Like just knowing that I'd be talking to you the next day and sitting jacking off together. I was like, oh, this is awesome.
I liked it. When you're not camming, do you often do it with a live partner? Like, do you connect with people to do it together in real time?
Yes.
And does it tend to be more of each one doing your own thing, or does it become sort of a mutual thing where you're helping each other out?
Well, that's a great question. It kind of depends. It varies. It's like anything sexual, right? It depends on the chemistry. And so I have a boy who lives down in Los Angeles. One of the greatest things about that relationship is when I'm in person with him and I take him deep, right? What I call the outer edges of the universe, like where I really expand his mind and take him to places in his bait that he just didn't even know existed, and break down every barrier. Very close, very personal, not him doing his own thing, but me sort of like guiding him like way deeper than he's ever been. Verbally and physically, like being right up against his grill with my hand behind his head, pulling him close to me and just talking straight into his ear. Man, I've brought him to tears before. And it's intense.
Lucky boy.
And the other thing too is he's like what I call a professional baiter, which is something that I'm really kind of into. So there's a whole spectrum of people's experience level. There are people who are just trying to really get into and get deeper into their own masturbation. And then there are other guys who are they come ready to go. They're just full blown professionals, man. They know how to stroke a cock and talk and go deep with you and, do everything. And they're just fully engaged. And really, I'll be honest with you, that's kind of where I am right now in my own experience. I've kind of I jokingly tell people I've kind of retired from coaching. I'm like a professor emeritus now. I'm a little bit more, I'm a little bit more senior, and I let the guys who are like in their early 40s now do the teaching. And so the day-to-day grunt work of teaching people how to, really jack off. Whereas I prefer to really connect with guys who are already there and don't really need to be taught necessarily. And the reason for that is that I just can go so much deeper with those guys, with the guys who are already fully formed, and they don't need me to teach them anything. And I just really, really enjoy that.
Your profile on Bate World, you say in it you're a hardcore masturbator.
Right.
What makes you a hardcore masturbator?
Well, I mean, and I always tell people that's a true statement. I'm a lawyer in real life, so I love to direct people and say, whatever you read in my profile is a true statement. There's no shading of that. The reason I put that down there is that when I go and jack off, I mean, I go and just throw the cards on the table and really fuck my fist, really get into it, really go deep. Maybe I'll do it for 4 or 5 hours straight, cut videos, go to the video chat, just really let it become all consuming. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
it's not just a quick wank in the bathroom. And I've had periods of that in my life, partners of mine over the years where jacking off was sort of relegated to the back of the class, where I would just do it in the bathroom when he was asleep in the other room just to get it off. But now, where it's just such a central part of my whole sexual identity, I mean, it's not like a passing hobby. It's like literally, something that I do with gusto every day.
You also say in your profile you're an edger and a cum denier. You mentioned you could do it for hours. They're probably thinking, what the hell? And can you explain a little bit about edging and the cum denial?
I think everybody remembers when you were, a teenage boy, maybe you were 13 or so, and you first started stroking your cock and masturbating when you were a teenager, right? If you could last a minute or two, that was probably pretty impressive for a 13-year-old boy, because you just pop your load so fast. The benefit of being 13 is you can do it like 4 or 5 or 6 times a day. Now, I'm now in my mid 50s, and I gotta be honest with you, I can't do it 5 or 6 times a day, but I love to keep it going. So what I ended up doing is I just edge my cock, right? Like I just bring it right up to the edge where I might drip a little, and it might be like if I really let it go, I would shoot a load. But my brain can just hold it back. I'll take my hand off and I'll just sort of go right up to the edge, right when you're just about ready to cross the threshold, the point of no return, when you can't stop it, like physiologically you cannot stop it once it starts, and just go up and play around with that line. Just go and push it. There's an incident when I was a teenager where I discovered the art of edging, right? Like what that was. Whereas I was a regularly adjusted teenage boy who jerked off every day, and I popped my load in a minute or two every single time. I had no control whatsoever. It's sort of the background on how I became like an edger and then like a cum denier later on. And that was, I was out with my best friend, and we were drinking, and we were overnight camping out in the woods, and I
I'm
came home.
stroking right now, by the way.
It was insane. And the guy, my buddy John, his name was John. I won't use his last name, but my buddy John, he was insanely hot. And I was so fucking worked up after this trip. And it was it was like, I was trying to think earlier what year that was. I think it was like either the summer of 1983 or 1984. I think maybe I was 17. So it was probably 1984. And we were in the eastern part of the state in the middle of fucking nowhere. And we're camping and we're drinking, and don't shame me, but we were drinking Bartles and James wine coolers. I mean, which were like the brand new rage on the market in the early 80s. And so I'm dating myself a bit. And we got hungover. Long story short, nothing happened between him and me on the trip, but we get home, and I came from a really big family. There were 7 people who lived in the house. And so it was rare for me to come home and have no one home. But I come home from this trip, I'm a little bit hungover and dehydrated, and there's no one in the house. It's totally alone. I'm like, oh, fuck yes. And I get in there and I go into the shower, and I'm hot because we were out in the desert of Eastern Washington. And slowly I turn the cool water on, right? And my dick starts getting hard, and I let the cold water run. But I just pointed the shower head right at my balls. My balls sort of like coming up into my gut. So there I am, kicked up against the back wall of the shower, right, with the shower head just like cold water. Eventually, I just entirely turn the hot water off. So now I've just got a stream of ice cold water just hitting my balls, and I start stroking my cock. And what I discovered in that moment was that because my nuts were pulled up into my gut, I could stroke this motherfucking cock way longer than 2 minutes. And I was like, oh shit, this is fucked up good. This feels fucking amazing. And so I just let it rip, man. Like I just started fucking jacking off. And I don't really, I honestly, it's been too many years, almost 40 years. I don't remember how long I was backed up against that wall, but my recollection is it was a long time. It's a hell of a lot longer than the usual 2-minute shot. And that's how I kind of, nobody told me what edging was. Nobody like introduced me to what edging was. I discovered it on my own in the shower, in the cold water. I just started getting the fuck into it. As soon as I discovered that, I was like, more please. And I just started fucking edging my cock so that I could make the feeling last and get fucking deep on it. And as a teenage boy, I guess I was 17 then. And then I just started really going at it and really trying to perfect that art. And now, I mean, I just shot a video the other day that's like 32 minutes long, nonstop, fist fucking, nasty fucking masturbation video, and I wasn't even close to losing my load. The years have gone by and I've just sort of mastered the art of taking it right up to the edge, throwing my hand off for a second, maybe grabbing my nuts, and then getting right back on my pole. And it doesn't even bother me. I don't even think about it anymore.
It's like orgasming over and over and over, isn't it?
It is. So here's the other thing, because the earlier part of your question was about being a cum denier. And that is, I think of it almost as like an auxiliary to edging. So there's some guys who are edgers, really, really hardcore edgers, right? Like they really do it. Like they'll spend 10 hours on a weekend day stroking their cock, and they've edged it all day long, and then they'll shoot their load. And then there are psychopaths like me who spend 10 hours a day stroking my cock, and then I'll just put it away and walk away. I mean, just like psychotic, and do it over and over and over again, like day after day after day, and just will not let my balls shoot a load.
Wow.
And there are a couple guys on Bate World actually who are just as twisted and fucked up as I am on that. And some guys who are even more fucked up than I am in that respect. I mean, I just did a 141-day cum denial last year. Or earlier this year, I guess. It was from November 9th until I can't remember what day, 141 days after November 9th, that I shot a load. And the reason I got into that a little bit was, as I got older, my refractory period, the bounce back period, when you're a teenager, you bounce back in a matter of an hour or two.
Right.
When you're 50 something, your bounce back can be a couple days, and that sucks. It's a bummer. But when you're a cum denier, you don't have to actually go through that bounce back period. It just gets higher and higher.
And you can start back up anytime you want.
You can start back up anytime you want. That's how I kind of got into cum denying. I will say this. I was not into cum denying before I joined Bate World. Like I was always an edger even before I joined Bate World, but I wasn't a cum denier. Cum denial sort of developed as I sort of got more into the community, and I have a video I posted probably 10 years ago now, like my first attempt at it. And it's almost quaint now. It's like, I think the video is called 14-Day Cum Shot. And I thought that was like this big accomplishment, right?
That's very big for a lot of people.
Yeah. In the cum denial world, though, that's like, it's almost routine,
Speaking practically, what do you use as lube for this? I mean, you're talking about jerking your dick for hour after hour after hour. What do you use? Yeah,
that's a really excellent question, because I have three things that I kind of go to. The most standard is Albolene. Mm-hmm. It's a makeup remover it's like the perfect grease. And I have to be honest, that I never knew about Albolene until I joined Bate World. I didn't know it was out there. I just didn't know.
Yeah.
My best friend on Bate World is a guy his screen name is Johnny. Lives in Seattle. Used to live here in San Francisco. He's the one that was riding along and introduced me to Bate World. And it was through him that I discovered Albolene. So that's kind of like everybody's go-to. Not everybody's go-to, but my go-to. And I would say, 95% of the guys who are stroking their cock on Bate World are using Albolene. I'm not usually big into like silicone based lubricants because there's just not enough friction for them. What do you call it? That lube, like a silicone based lube. I don't never use that. But there is a product from Gun Oil that they put out, and I don't know how long it's been on the market, but it's called Stroke 29. And if you'll allow me just to laugh for a second, their little tagline is, "Can you make it to the 29th stroke?"
29th.
I'm like, 29th stroke, man. I'm just getting warmed up. I'm not even warmed up. 29 strokes. Yeah, we can make it to the 29th stroke.
They better change that number.
Right? I was like, the 29,000th, you mean? Here's why I like that stuff so much, is that it starts off really sticky. It starts off really tacky. And I love to just tease and torture the head of my cock. And when I put that sticky Stroke 29 straight out of the tube right on the tip of my dick, and I just start working it in my fingertips, because it's so sticky and tacky when it starts off, the friction is insane. And it just makes my dick pop so fast. I fucking love that. And then you put it on and you put more down your shaft once you got your dick going, and it's still sticky. The friction feels great. And then as it warms up, it feels different than Albolene, but it's not as slick as like the lube that you used to use, when you're fucking, which has no friction. And then my other go-to, man, I gotta be honest with you. I love this shit. I don't care. People laugh at me. I don't give a fuck. Is I love Vaseline. I've got a jar of Vaseline because I love that sticky feel for it. And it's like old school, man. It reminds me of high school. I just fucking love it, man.
Little container next to your bed with some hair in it. And
yeah, exactly. It's just like being back in high school, man. I went to an all-boys Catholic high school in downtown Seattle. It was like a festival of testosterone, like constantly jacking off. So when something reminds me of high school, I just dive into it, because the shit that I remember being into in high school, like pit hair and jock straps and dirty socks and the smells and all that stuff, and Vaseline, right? Because I mean, fuck, man, when I was 17, we didn't have Albolene around. We just had Vaseline. That's what we jacked off with. And so it reminds me of high school.
Where did you shoot your load when you were at that age? What did you do with the evidence?
Oh, God, that's such a great question. I had this thing when I was in high school. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and so I was a snow skier. I used to snow ski every weekend. And I would always come home like on Saturday night. And again, I lived in I had a big family, and we had a modest house, and we had a big family. So it was really hard to get private time, right? And I had to share a room with my Irish twin. So I have an Irish twin who sounds just like me. In fact, when I hear my own voice on a video or something like that, it's like listening to my brother. It's just bizarre. And he's built like I am. He looks like we used to look like twins when we were younger, although he's black Irish. So he's like got dark black hair and olive skin. So I would have to share a room with him, and he's basically my age as well. So we both knew what was going on. If I were just, stroking my cock in the room with my younger brother around, I'd just shoot a load, and there was probably underwear. But when I would come home from skiing, I had this little ritual where I would go into the bathroom, and I would go into the bathtub and draw like a hot bath. And it was impossible for me to take one of those hot baths after a day skiing and not stroke my cock a lot. And so I would shoot that shit into the water. And then suddenly, you shoot your load, and you no longer have any interest in it at all, right? Like suddenly you're like, oh, fuck, I got to get away from this. This is like big cum load floating around. So I definitely had to make sure that. So when I was a kid, that's generally where I would do it. I would do it in the bathroom. I'd shoot it in the bathroom sink, or if I was in the bathtub, I'd just shoot it in the water.
I used to shoot it in my socks. My poor mother.
Oh, that's hysterical, right? Moms, but the funny thing is that moms know this shit. Moms know this stuff. They know exactly what's going on.
There are a lot of bait groups around.
Yeah.
They have not so much during the pandemic now, but prior to that, there was the San Francisco Jacks, the New York Jacks, There's Healthy Friction, which has been going around different places. And of
Hmm.
course, there are, smaller groups from in towns with people privately hosting. Is that something that you're into or no?
The answer is no. Believe it or not, I have a hard time in big groups of. I've been to Healthy Friction in Palm Springs once, enjoyed it. A couple friends of mine are very active in running it, and which is great. But I have a hard time with that much activity, which is also why, as much as I love to cam on the Bait World video chat, rarely do I go into ring rooms or Zoom rooms. When there's like 30 or 35 guys, just sort of that chaos.
Mm-hmm.
That chaos for me is actually it's not a positive stimulation. It's actually really hard for me to get into my groove like that. And so I tend not to go into like ring rooms or Zoom rooms and stuff. But I do have a few buddies where we have a really tight knit, like little brotherhood on Skype. So there may be like 3 or 4 of us in a Skype, and we all know each other. We all know each other's style and all that kind of stuff. That I love. That's awesome because it can be really satisfying. But the sort of random collection of 30 to 40 guys all in a Zoom room, it's just not something that really gets me going. And so I tend not to go into those for that reason. The in-person stuff like SF Jacks, I've never been to those just for the same reason. Like when they're like 10, 15 guys around and I don't know them and it's not really an intimate setting, it's sort of like, maybe in a warehouse space, that doesn't really get me going. However, my buddy Johnny, when he lived here in San Francisco, he would have bait parties over at his house where there were like, 7, 8, 9 guys. That was fucking fun. That I loved. So I like it, but it tends to be like for me in a little bit of more of an intimate setting rather than just a big open public, anybody show up type thing.
I'm exactly the same way.
Are you the same way? Oh, good. I thought maybe
Yes.
I was alone.
No, I'm told. I could be camming and there could be, 100 people watching. I'm okay with that. They're not actually in the room. But if I go to a group event, in real life, real people standing there, I can't even get hard.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad for a long time, I thought there was absolutely something wrong with me. Like I was just maladjusted in some way.
And then people think there's something wrong with me. It becomes very intimidating and then I get uncomfortable. And then the more uncomfortable I get, the more difficult it is to get hard. So it's not it doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because I have the same thing. For me, like if I were to go to like a big, like let's say SF Jacks or something here in San Francisco, I would be thinking about the fact that I bet you anything I'm going to have a hard time getting my dick hard at this thing so that it just becomes self-fulfilling. I'll walk in and my dick will absolutely not get hard because I've been obsessing about how it's not going to get hard for hours before I show up.
Right.
And it was bummer because I've been to pool parties down in Palm Springs, great group of people, etc. And it's the same thing. It's kind of just the same thing. It doesn't matter. Even if I drop a Viagra, it doesn't matter. It's more like a mental block than anything else.
I totally get it. I get it. When you are playing in person with people, does it ever turn into something else? Or when you get together with another baiter, it's going to end, or it begins and ends with baiting. It doesn't become oral. Nobody's going to fuck anyone. Or can that happen?
That has happened, right before the pandemic hit. So that would have been in like late February of this year, 2020. I met someone on Bait World. So fucking blazing hot, right? Like just beautiful, like everything that I'm not, like dark skin, hair, hairy and beautiful body hair, right? Like I have none of that. I love big hairy men. Like I love the things that I'm not. I'm just attracted to, yeah, right? I'm just attracted to things that I don't have. And so thick, body hair is it's just a trigger for me. And the two of us got together and it was just explosive. It was so fucking good. Sucking dick, fucking, stroking, it was just burn the house down. And that's great. I love it. So I'm totally open to that. Jacking off and masturbation is a central part of my identity. But if you put the right chemical in, and I let things go wherever they're going to go, right? I thoroughly enjoyed that weekend. We got like a little Airbnb north of the city, and when you meet somebody the first time, it's kind of boring to just like entertain them in your apartment or
Mhm.
your house. You know what I mean? Your familiar surrounding. So we just got an Airbnb up on the coast, and it just turned into like this awesome experience. Just so fucking hot, and it was great. So yeah, sometimes that happens. Not always, but sometimes it does.
What about cum? A lot of guys, when they're jerking off, they're tasting their pre-cum. A lot of guys who will shoot and eat their load. Is that
Oh, I
weird?
love that. Oh yeah. I love when guys do that. Like I have big drips, because I'm like a cum denier, my it's always really close to the top. So I'll get like big dewdrops that come out. I love the taste of my own cum. I put it right on the tip of my tongue, man. I love to taste that. Yeah, it's fucking delicious. And I have since I was a teenager. I've been eating my own spunk since I was a teenager. I think just the thing I love about it is I just love the community of masturbators. So the guys who are really into it really get it. They're not like tourists. They're coming to set up shop, and they're going to like jack off. And when you get guys like that who like really know how to handle their dick, really know how to get into it, who really know how to get into that mental space, it
Mhm.
can be extremely satisfying, really. But this is interesting. Just riffing with you, something just hit me. I was talking about somebody earlier today. I was just chatting with somebody on Skype, and the funny thing is that there's a whole sort of segment of guys who are into gooning, right?
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah. So,
We haven't covered that. Monkey baiting.
yeah, we haven't covered that. And we probably haven't covered it because as much as of a masturbator as I am, I'm not a gooner, right?
Mhm.
Like I don't stick my tongue out. And there's some guys who
Yeah, let's explain that to our listeners what gooning is.
gooning is you just start drooling and your tongue sticks out, your eyes roll back, and you're just fucked up on the shit. And you're so into it and you're off on another space. They almost look like a monkey who's just sitting in a tree, just like fucking
Mhm.
wanking his dick, and you've lost all perspective and you're just really rolling with it. And there's some guys who are really into that goon space where their tongue's out and they're just like making almost primate or primal noises. I'm not that kind of baiter. I'm not a gooner.
I want to back up, just share something. As far as the cum goes, I'm into my own pre-cum. I don't typically want to eat my own load after I shoot, because then the energy's gone, that whole interest in it. I'll do it. I'll do it to entertain someone I'm with if they want to see that. But what
Yeah,
I do really like, if I'm baiting with someone in person, is eating their load after they shoot. Makes me crazy.
right.
That
That's hot as fuck, right?
that's a bonding thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's hot. And then there's speaking of bonding things too. And I read an article in the New York Times probably within the last 3 or 4 months about gay men and pit smells, right? Like the hairy underarms.
Hmm.
And there's some science on about how gay guys can tell other gay guys just from the scent. It's just like actual scientific article. And I thought that was so fascinating because I have been into men's pits and pit hair and the smell of that musky smell in a man's pits
Hmm.
for since I was a teenager. And there was an interesting article. I can't remember the whole thing about it, but it's actually some science around men who bond with other men and being into pits. And don't ask me to quote the study. Go look it up on Google. New York Times, men's pit. It's like, but anyway, it's this really interesting article. I was like, oh fuck, man, there's some science here. Big surprise. Because there's some guys who are just so into different things like that. You know what I
Man
mean? Like
set.
man scent, and I am into like not showering. I think I say this on my Bait World profile.
Mhm.
Big into I don't have a rank stench, so I can go like 3 or 4 days without taking a shower, no problem. And I love the just the smell of it. It just works me up.
This is where I think I'm weird, because so many guys are into, I guess you'd call it man scent. I like soap and water clean.
Do
That's my
you?
thing. Yeah. I like
That's
things very clean. Some of my listeners now are going, oh shit. It took the whole fantasy away.
So I have this, I remember, God, I was probably in my 20s, right? Like when I was first coming out, and yeah, you know, when you're first coming out in your early 20s or whenever it was that you came out, and you have your first group of gay friends and you're sitting at a party, and it's liberating. It's a lot of fun because you can talk with other guys about things that you kept to yourself for all the time that you were growing up and you were in the closet and no one knew, and, you know, blah, 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 all this stuff. And I remember posing a question at like a small party with some of my closest friends. I was like, okay, guys, let's say that you come upon a roofer who's like roofing the house in the middle of summer, sweaty, no shirt, hot as fuck. Do you make him take a shower or do you just go right at it? And they're like, oh no, I want to make him take a shower. Like, oh, fuck you all, man. Like the nasty grease monkey. I'm going right up on the roof, man. I'm gonna suck that motherfucker's dick right away. No fucking shower for me, man. I want to smell all of that. You know, I love that. I love that scent, sort of that nasty, musky, hasn't taken a shower scent. And now, not when it's rank and putrid, but just like, I'm not one of those guys who wants you to take a shower. I'm okay if you skip the shower after the gym and come over to my place. It's all good.
Is there anything you think we haven't covered related to the whole bait community?
No, I think we've done a pretty good job, man. We've covered it all. It's been fun.
Well, thank you very much for sharing so much of yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. It's been great. I appreciate it.
For more information about a guest appearing on Sexual Heroes, visit the show notes at sexualheroes.com or on your favorite podcast app. You'll find Sexual Heroes on Apple, iTunes, Google, Spotify, and many others. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for listening.